Hey, hey, family of light. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Storm Theatigus, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. To all of those returning, howdy. So today I kind of wanted to touch base on something that I've been experiencing lately. And throughout this journey, if you are committed to the journey, you're going to face having to do this process many times, and that is confronting your own limiting beliefs, which are blocking you, confronting them, examining them, introspecting them on them, and then I want to teach you a couple of methods to begin to break that down and then to overcome them. Essentially, when we have these limiting beliefs, they're not likely to be beliefs that have been ingrained in your head recently, unless they've been ingrained in your head over the period of a very long time, such as if you were in, say, a bad relationship, a toxic relationship, and whomever it was that was your partner was telling you something over and over and over and over again for many years. So I'm talking like more than a couple of years. So if you've been with somebody for, anywhere from 3 to 20 years, longer, these are the kinds of things that will be ingrained in your head, right? But a lot of these, even with recent, like I would say these are recent patterns, right? Even these limiting beliefs that are ingrained into your head in such a relationship on a more recent basis um, have ties in your childhood. And so it's really important that when you are facing a block, to recognize that that's what's going on, and then to begin the process of identifying what the limiting beliefs are behind that. And what does a block look like? Well, I can tell you that for me, a block often comes up in the way of procrastination or avoidance. And that is just showing you or demonstrating to you that there is something triggering you. And until you become aware that you're being triggered by something, and which is a limiting belief, you can't connect the two. You just think you're being lazy or you're avoiding something because you don't want to deal with it. That's not actually the case. What the case is that you've been pre-programmed to stay away from that and to really take charge on that because you have limiting beliefs that don't allow you to step past the threshold because it would be dangerous. And even though rationally we know that it's not dangerous for us to take a step forward in our own um, direction to make our life more positive, we know this, rationally we know this, but there's some part of us that is still continuing to hold us back. And it usually stems from a place of fear or lack of confidence or any number of negative emotions that we experienced as a child with regards to the beliefs that we were fed. So let me just recapture that for a moment in short form. So if you have a limiting belief that you picked up in childhood, there is likely an emotion attached to it that's negative. And when I say likely, guaranteed. You don't typically have a negative connotation and become conflicted with a limiting belief when it's positive or associated with something positive. So anytime that you find yourself triggered by something that somebody has said or done, or any time that you feel like you need to withdraw, that means you're triggered, and you need to, either process the stuff yourself, the information or the feelings or whatever it is, the experience. Or you feel like you are avoiding it or procrastinating on it, you have to look at what it is that is triggering you, because that's just a function or a mechanism of a response which creates fear. And this is all happening behind the scenes in, your inner child's land, or you can also look at it in terms of this is happening in your subconscious. You're not actively aware of what is going on, and that's why this introspection and becoming attuned to these reactions is so important. Because by doing so, you recognize in the moment, or even, further down, depending on how many times you're circulating around the same thing, the same issue. Um, in that moment, you can recognize what is actually happening, and becoming aware of your own signs and how you actually react to these triggers and how you cope with them. Because let's be honest, they're coping mechanisms that we developed in our childhood in order to keep us safe. Um, Whatever it is that you have taught yourself is going to be unique and specific to you as well. But in general, those are the broadest forms that you're going to find. And you may be able to recognize yourself in one of those or all of those things that I've said, and maybe even more. The more you pay attention to your own patterns of behavior, the more you're going to start to be able to recognize other patterns of behavior within yourself. So you'll see when you get triggered, and you'll see when you're avoiding something, and you'll see when you're being confronted with some sort of limiting belief or an emotion. And the fact of the matter is that all of these things tie together in such a fluid way, that I don't think it's taught enough to people, that when you are digging into one facet of your being, such as a limiting belief, it's not just a limiting belief. Attached to that is a feeling, an emotion. It's an experience, right? So we need to look at things holistically when we're looking at finding the solutions to our own blockages and our own problems and our own selves getting in our own ways. We need to look at this holistically, which means that we need to look at all of it, not just one thing. And by looking at the whole picture, it allows us to properly assess what it is that we're truly experiencing. And then we can properly begin to heal and release these patterns. And some of these limiting beliefs that I am facing are completely absurd. And they've been fed to me in my last relationship for so long. And during a point where my cognitive function was so low due to the intense psychological and emotional abuse that I sustained, it had me in a state of psychological and mental impairment, like cognitive impairment. I was functioning, but I was functioning on autopilot, and there was some part of me that had to disassociate completely from my body in order to survive the experience, with PTSD or CPTSD and many other things. So a lot of these patterns of behavior that were occurring in my relationship, um, were going unnoticed. And so when I look back now, I can see just how many things were implemented or embedded into my frame of reference, my structure, um, to the point where it became me telling myself these things. right? And so I'm coming up against many completely absurd limiting beliefs that don't make logical sense why it would hinder me from progressing. But I understand how this works. So I understand that they were implemented into my subconscious while I was in a state that rendered me fairly unconscious. And those limiting beliefs, though seem very ridiculous, are still present. And when I examine those limiting beliefs further as to why I would even buy into those, I mean, part of it is the experience that I had. Yes, absolutely. But what is tying this experience to my past? And what were the limiting beliefs from my past? Because there's always some sort of tie. Otherwise, you would hear that for the most part. Most people would hear that if they're not conditioned, and it would go in one ear and out the other because there is no conditioning to believe that. I mean, I'm not saying it can't happen. It can. After a long period of being in an abusive relationship or being with somebody long enough, period, it can definitely happen. So, some of those limiting beliefs were definitely from my childhood. And um, to be honest, when I examine them, the belief, when it comes down to the core, some of the core beliefs, because of course you can have a bunch of beliefs that are more recent or throughout the course of your life, but the core beliefs came down to I am too fragile to exist in the world. I'm not capable of taking care of myself, which is also something that my ex has spouted to me even recently. Things like, you're delusional if you think you can make it out there on your own. So, but that goes back to the same thing. It's almost the same thing as what I was taught as a child, which was because I was sensitive, I was empathic, and I was the only one in my whole family who had or felt or expressed emotions to this degree or could even feel them fully and reciprocate them. I was taught that because I had emotions and feelings, that I was too sensitive. And then that they had to protect me from the world because of, like, protect me from my own sensitivity. And what really was happening was not protection, it was control. And so there was this false narrative of being overprotected, but I actually wasn't being protected at all. In fact, when I look back at my life, I have never been protected by anybody. I've protected myself. That is why I have developed abilities to think very quickly and talk my way out of a very dangerous situation with ease because I've been in many very dangerous situations and had to think very quickly and become very acutely attuned to my psychic abilities and my intuition in order to stay alive. So I have always kept myself there. I have always protected myself, but I have never been protected by anybody else. And so there was this false illusion around everything that I had experienced, which was mind blowing. Because here I thought, okay, I'm struggling with these beliefs. Confirmation. I'm struggling with just these beliefs, these limitations that are keeping me from being successful, from, like keeping me in the self-sabotage. That's what we call it when you do things like avoid or you procrastinate, right? You're self-sabotaging. But what is behind these things? I mean, I thought for sure it was just these beliefs, but when I went further back down into the rabbit hole that is my brain, I realized that no, it goes so much deeper than that. And there are emotions tied to those things and experiences and feelings. And because of that, because it can be so complex, people can have a very hard time introspecting enough to get to the root cause of these issues. So for me, what started off as I can't be successful on my own. The world's too scary to get out there on my own. I'll never be able to have a good paying job that, you know, allows me to take care of myself and my children. I'll never be able to take care of myself. All of these ridiculous limiting beliefs, which stem from my childhood, which I was taught, that I was too fragile to exist in the world because I actually had emotions and a emotionless sea of family, which was my immediate family. Um, I was taught to be weak. I was taught to never say no, right? And or to stand up for myself. And because of all of these things tying in together, it left me in this space of, I guess, fearing the world. That's what it boiled down to, like fearing the world because I wasn't going to be able to survive in this world. And when you go through your life having experiences, often you attract experiences or even manifest experiences that in turn will reinforce these ideas. And so then you believe them, right? It reinforces the limiting beliefs that you picked up from family and friends and experiences. But then it also reinforces these ideas into your head because you're experiencing confirmation after confirmation after confirmation, which leads you to have feelings about certain things, right? It's not just thoughts, but feelings come from those thoughts. And so when you are reaffirming the same thing over and over and over and over again, then these belief systems and the emotions and the feelings tied to them just become reaffirmed every time. And um, that is how you actually become triggered. And that's subconscious patterning, right? It's not a conscious thing. Because as I said in other videos, if somebody comes up to you who reminds you of somebody who hurt you when you were a child, just that one thing that is familiar about them can trigger you and bring you back to your childhood. But that's not happening on a conscious level. Neither is this. That's why we need to program ourselves to become aware of our patterns of behavior. And as soon as you do that, then the world opens up for you. As soon as you can become consciously aware, you can begin introspection and you can begin to identify and isolate the feelings and the patterns and the limiting beliefs. And, right, you can look at it all holistically. Now, I know my truth. I know what I grew up in. I know that that was a dry, parched desert in terms of emotional, mental, spiritual resources, and that I was all of those things. And I grew up in an environment where I felt alone, right? I know my truth. And therefore, I also know that all of these limiting beliefs, once I get down to the bottom of them, are not true. They were my experience in the past as a child who could not understand what was going on, could not understand that the people in my environment were not capable of giving and receiving love, did not understand the um, emotional immaturity that existed within my family system. I didn't have the capability as a child to understand the depths of all of this information. Therefore, my experience was limited by my capacity to fully understand and process this information on an intellectual level. So, whatever beliefs I did pick up were not only the beliefs of my parents or family members or people in my environment that aren't mine, but they're also based off the emotional experiences that I was having at that time. And so when you look at your limiting belief, it's going to be associated with a feeling. And I think what I'll do is I'll leave this video as it is so that my videos are a bit shorter because, they've been getting long and I think it's easier sometimes to watch these videos when they're shorter. And then in the next video, I'm going to talk about the different ways of actually breaking down the patterns, or breaking down the limiting belief, and how to change course, how to rectify that, how to actually remove or use different tools to help you to remove those limiting beliefs from your own mind, your own subconscious, your own program, right? Because these are parts of you that are no longer serving you. But until you actually take the first steps and start identifying what they are, you can't move forward. And so you keep coming up against this same belief system over and over and over again. And it's going to trigger you time and time again until you realize that's what's going on. All right. So I love you all very much. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.